First story. My wife cheated years ago and hid a shocking secret about my best friend. Now she refuses a paternity test for our new baby, leaving me questioning everything. Let me take you back to the unraveling of a marriage that once felt unbreakable. I've been with Emily, my wife, for nearly 15 years. I poured everything I had into this relationship, including raising her older children as if they were my own. Together, we had 2 beautiful kids and recently welcomed a third. But here's the thing. I'm not signing the birth certificate for the baby until I confirm, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the child is mine. It sounds harsh, doesn't it? But you'll understand why as I share what led to this breaking point. In 2014, everything came crashing down. Emily betrayed me in a way I never thought possible. She was unfaithful, having an affair with her supervisor. It only came to light when she was abruptly fired, and the company filed charges against her for allegations that I won't detail here. Her supervisor, the man she had an affair with for 2 years, was named as a co-defendant. When the truth spilled out, it wasn't voluntary on her part. It was forced by circumstance. I was shattered, completely lost. Trust, which had taken years to build, evaporated in an instant. My reaction was immediate and firm. I requested paternity tests for our 2 children. Thankfully, they were mine. Hired a lawyer, and moved out. I was ready to leave everything behind, but the thought of breaking up our family and not being there every day for the kids gnawed at me. Against my better judgment, I decided to give Emily another chance. And for a while, it seemed like the right choice. We rebuilt, or so I thought. The years that followed were some of the best of our marriage. Emily seemed like the woman I fell in love with all those years ago. Our relationship felt stronger, the intimacy was incredible, and for a time I allowed myself to believe we had overcome the worst. But then, her childhood best friend, Megan, came into the picture. Or rather, the absence of Megan did. Emily and Megan had been inseparable for decades, like sisters. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, Megan cut ties. She changed her number, blocked me and our older kids, and completely vanished from our lives. Emily was heartbroken, and often spoke about how much she missed her friend. When Emily became pregnant with our youngest child, she fell into a deep depression. She constantly brought up how much she missed Megan, especially because Megan had always been her rock in tough times. I thought reconnecting with Megan might help, so I tracked down her contact information and reached out. The conversation with Megan wasn't what I expected. At all. Megan unloaded years of resentment and frustration. She called me a flying monkey for enabling Emily and said I should be ashamed of myself. She revealed that she ended their friendship because she was exhausted from Emily's constant demands and selfish behavior. According to Megan, my wife treated her like a tool, never reciprocating or even showing basic gratitude. Megan had tried to quietly distance herself, but Emily didn't let her. This is where things took a darker turn. Megan told me about my best friend, Ryan. Apparently, Emily sent Ryan to pressure Megan into maintaining their friendship. Ryan, in his misguided attempt to help, crossed serious boundaries. His messages to Megan became menacing, and he even hinted at using spyware to monitor her. Megan filed a formal complaint against him. When she shared the court documents, evidence, and case number with me, I felt sick. Ryan confessed to his actions but claimed he was just trying to help Emily. When I confronted my wife, she admitted she was desperate to keep Megan in her life, but insisted nothing inappropriate happened between her and Ryan. Still, doubts crept in. If Emily could manipulate Ryan into committing illegal acts, what else could she have been hiding? When I asked Megan if she knew about Emily's past infidelity, she said yes, and that it was one of the reasons she cut ties. Her exact words still echo in my mind. Your wife is a black hole. She drains everything and everyone around her. This revelation reopened old wounds I thought had healed. I couldn't ignore the possibility that Emily and Ryan might have had an affair. Her defensiveness when I asked only fueled my suspicions. Things came to a head when I requested a paternity test for our youngest child. Emily refused, outright and vehemently. Her reaction was extreme. She threatened to divorce me, accused me of being abusive, and claimed I was humiliating her by not being there for the baby's birth. I moved out before she went into labor. I wasn't there to drive her to the hospital, and I wasn't in the delivery room. And until she agrees to the paternity test, I won't meet the baby. Now Emily is accusing me of abandoning her during a vulnerable time. She says being alone in the maternity ward was humiliating and that I'm being cruel. But I don't see it that way. I've been present for our other kids, making sure they're cared for, but I've drawn a line. I told her she needs to find support elsewhere. Family, friends, anyone but me, until this situation is resolved. My family is divided. Some think I'm overreacting and jumping to conclusions. They don't know about her affair or Ryan's involvement. They see me as the bad guy. This whole ordeal has taken a toll on my health. Anxiety and panic attacks have become a regular part of my life. I'm trying to keep it together for my kids, but some days it feels impossible. Am I wrong for demanding proof before I can move forward? Or am I just prolonging the inevitable collapse of a marriage that should have ended years ago? Second story. My fiancé became obsessed with a cult-like church and forced fitness plans, so I left him. He then proposed to someone else with my ring on my birthday. Looking back now, it feels like a chapter from someone else's life. But no, this madness actually happened to me. And even 2 decades later, it's still one of the most absurd experiences I've ever lived through. I was 19 at the time and engaged to a guy I thought was my forever person. Let's call him Roger. Roger and I had one of those love stories that felt like it was straight out of a rom-com. We grew up together in the same tight-knit church community, and our families were practically intertwined. We had pictures from each other's birthday parties as kids, and everyone teased that we were destined to be together. And honestly, I believed it too. We reconnected during our senior year of high school after a few years apart when my family was helping out at another church. The moment he saw me again, it was like no time had passed. We clicked immediately, started dating, and were inseparable. He was my best friend, my prom date, and the guy who made my heart race. Everyone around us was constantly gushing about how perfect we were for each other. It felt like a fairy tale. Things were great at first. I was in college, working a job I loved, and enjoying life. On my 19th birthday, Roger proposed. I was over the moon and, of course, said yes. We dove headfirst into wedding planning, and I even got my own apartment shortly after. I wanted to prove I could be independent and create a home for us to move into once we were married. Everything seemed to be falling into place. But then, things started to shift. Slowly at first, but then, it was like the red flags were raining down from the sky. The first major issue? Roger's mom. She had always been kind to me, but once we got engaged, it was like a switch flipped. She started treating me like some temptress out to corrupt her innocent baby boy. Let me remind you, we were both 19 years old, not exactly kids. But since Roger still lived with his parents, she laid down some ridiculous rules. She demanded that if we wanted to spend time together, it had to be at their house with adult supervision. The idea of him coming over to my apartment? Absolutely scandalous in her eyes. I refused to play along, and instead of standing up for me, Roger stayed silent. Total mama's boy behavior. Things only got weirder from there. Roger started hanging out with 2 brothers, ages 14 and 17. Yes, teenage boys. It was bizarre, but I tried to brush it off at first. These kids were obsessed with lifting weights, and suddenly, Roger caught the fitness bug. He became addicted to working out and decided I should join in too. One day, he showed up at my apartment with workout videos. These weren't your average 20-minute exercises. No, these were grueling 45-minute to 90-minute long sessions. For context, I'm a 6'1" woman who weighed about 180 pounds at the time. I wasn't overweight and had zero desire to start this fitness journey he'd envisioned for me. I was already juggling college, a job, and paying all my bills. I barely had time to sleep, let alone commit to hours of workouts. But Roger didn't care. He was relentless. Movie nights and relaxing evenings were replaced with forced workout sessions. He even made a schedule and insisted I stick to it. Whenever he came over, he'd check on me, literally. At one point, he picked me up and put me on a scale to see if I was losing weight. The audacity was unreal. As if that wasn't bad enough, these new friends of his dragged him into a church that gave off serious cult vibes. The first time he took me there, I was shocked. New members were taken into a back room, surrounded by a group of people, and pressured to speak in tongues before they were allowed to leave. If you couldn't do it, they implied you weren't a true Christian. Roger became obsessed with this church. He started insisting we attend together, and even demanded we get married there. I refused outright. That was the beginning of the end. Our relationship turned into constant arguments. Every conversation felt like a battle, and I didn't recognize the person he was becoming. Then came the ultimatum. 6 months before the wedding, Roger told me it was either him and the church or nothing at all. That was it for me. I handed him the engagement ring and walked away. Years of friendship, love, and memories, all gone in a few months. He didn't even try to fight for us. He blocked me on social media immediately, like I was some stranger he never cared about. But here's the kicker. Within months, he was dating someone else from that church. And if that wasn't bad enough, he proposed to her on my birthday with the same engagement ring he'd given me. It stung at first, but karma is a funny thing. Through the grapevine, I found out that he eventually cut ties with those teenage boys and that cultish church after some scandalous revelations came to light. And as for his marriage, let's just say it's far from a fairy tale ending. Looking back, I can only feel relief. It's like I dodged a nuclear bomb. Third story. My stepmom passed away, and now my dad wants me to take full custody of my little brother. But with my finances struggling, can I really step up, or will this change my life forever? Life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them, and this past weekend I found myself standing at a crossroads I never imagined facing. Let me set the scene. I'm 28 years old, living in Denver, Colorado, and working hard to make ends meet with a post-tax income of around $45,000 a year. My dad and I don't have the warmest relationship. Honestly, we barely had one until about a year ago. He's not exactly a model father, with 6 kids spread across 4 different mothers. I'm the second oldest, but growing up he wasn't much of a presence in my life. That changed a little when I reconnected with him recently, mostly out of curiosity about the man who played such a distant role in my childhood. During one of those visits, I met his wife, my stepmom, and their young son, my 6-year-old half-brother. My stepmom was battling stomach cancer, and while she was in remission at the time, her health had clearly taken a toll on their family dynamics. To put it bluntly, my dad and stepmom weren't exactly hands-on parents. My dad works 2 full-time jobs, which means he's barely home, catching just a few hours of sleep between 12 a.m. and 4 a.m. before he's back at it again. My stepmom, on the other hand, was weak and exhausted from her treatments. She didn't have the energy to prepare proper meals for my brother, so his diet consisted mostly of sugary snacks, candy, chips, Slurpees. During my visit, I was heartbroken to see how neglected my little brother seemed, even if it wasn't intentional. The only proper meals he ate were the ones I made while I was there. By the end of my stay, I prepped several days' worth of balanced meals for him and stocked the fridge with any fruits and vegetables he was willing to try. My dad later told me my brother devoured everything in just 2 days. Fast forward to now, my stepmom passed away suddenly last weekend. Even though she was in remission, her health took an unexpected turn for the worse. It was devastating news, but what made things even more complicated was the situation with my brother. My stepmom had been separated from my dad for some time and had taken my brother with her to live with her family, presumably so they could help care for him while she focused on her recovery. But now that she's gone, her family wants nothing to do with my brother. I received a panicked call from my dad, telling me that her family had essentially said, "Come get him, or he's going into foster care." It was like a gut punch. My dad, overwhelmed by his work schedule and the reality of being a single parent again, immediately asked me if I could take full custody of my brother. I barely had time to process what he was saying before my mind started racing with a million questions. Could I really do this? What would it mean for my life? How would I manage financially? Don't get me wrong, I love my brother. He's a sweet kid who deserves so much more than he's been given so far. The idea of him ending up in foster care makes my stomach turn. I can't bear the thought of him growing up thinking no one cared enough to take him in. But stepping into the role of a parent, especially on such short notice, feels like an overwhelming responsibility. I know kids are expensive. Between rent, childcare, and everyday living costs, I'm already wondering how I'd make it work. I live on my own and would need at least $1,000 more per month just to afford a bigger place where my brother could have his own room. Sure, I might qualify for government assistance if I became his legal guardian, but I have no idea how much that would actually help. And then there's my dad. Could he even pay child support? Would he? He barely has time to breathe, let alone take on more financial burdens. Before anyone assumes I'm completely unprepared for this, I should mention that I've been here before in a way. When I was a teenager, I practically raised my 3 younger siblings on my mom's side until I turned 18 and moved out. Now, I work as a nanny, so I'm no stranger to the challenges of raising kids. But this is different. This is a lifelong commitment. I feel like I'm standing at the edge of a cliff, trying to decide whether to jump. On one hand, I know taking in my brother could completely change my life, my freedom, my finances, my future. On the other hand, how could I live with myself if I let him go into the system? I'm torn between what I know is the right thing to do and what feels feasible for my current situation. So now I'm left asking myself, can I step up and give him the life he deserves? Or am I setting both of us up for failure by saying yes?